and he's also an outstanding to the MDRT community. He's worked with MDRT people here in Christchurch. He works with all sorts of very high performance people. But the thing that I most love about Sridhar is he's very much into the whole person concept. I've seen him working with people who make really good amounts of money, and they go to see him for all sorts of areas in their life that they want to get some gains. And he's just been a peak performer in our life. And we all refer people. I've referred many people to Sridhar, and not one, literally not one bad experience. Everybody has had an amazing interaction with him and got everything they possibly wanted. So I'm kind of excited to introduce you to Sridhar Krishnamurti, my friend and my life coach, really. Sridhar, over to you.
Thank you, Brian. Really appreciate that very kind introduction. Equally amazing to be working with you and your lovely wife and all of the people that you've sent my way. Also, thank you to everyone for having me on this call. It's great to have an opportunity to spend the next hour with you and share a few tips that I trust will help you to be able to get a result in your life or take something to a new level in a way that's important to you. So as Brian mentioned, I am a strategy and mindset specialist. Basically what that means is I help people to get the best out of themselves and to get the most out of life. So, or some aspect of it. So it may be a business result, or it may be a mindset result. It may be in personal relationships or a lot of different areas that I work in. And I work with quite a wide range of people as well. So as Brian mentioned, businesses, both large and small, top business people across the world, as well as salespeople, athletes, performers, and I work with just everyday people that are wanting to have some sort of increased result in their life. So by way of introduction and how I got involved in this work, it really goes back to a day 30 years ago this year in Seattle, Washington in 1991. And it was really the first time that I looked up and saw this structure for the first time, which is the Seattle Space Needle. And as I put my bags down and looked up at the needle, at the Space Needle, it was an epiphany for me. It was a changing moment in my life because that was the moment that through all of the turmoil that I had been experiencing to that point, I heard from somewhere deep within me a message that would change, or whatever you want to call it. Like I felt a message or felt some words that would change my life. And it said, Sridhar, you're meant to be up there, not down here. And then the words that followed would change the course of my destiny from that point forward. And that is, there's an infinite potential for your life. What are you going to do? So if we go back and see why that was impactful to me, and going back to the start, I grew up on the southeast coast of the United States. So not quite Boston, but just quite a bit down the coast from there in a town called Savannah, Georgia. And the long and short of it is I grew up in a family that was very academic in nature, valued academia quite highly. And I grew up with a brother that was a superstar in that area. So he got the straight A's, was always the valedictorian, top of the class. And basically what that translated to is he got what I called the positive attention. So he got the positive love, the accolades, these types of things. And whether it was true or not, I believe that I could never live up to what he was doing. So as all children do, we seek attention somehow, and I went a different route, which was basically to act up. And as a consequence, I got what I call the negative attention and, the why can't you be more like your brother type attention. So I grew up feeling quite a lot of pain. I felt things about myself like I was inferior to my brother. My parents didn't really care about me or want me. I simply just wasn't good enough. And now I can look back and say that I know that that's not true. But as I was growing up, it really felt true. And it was a painful growing up experience. So by the time I was 13, and someone had given me my first recreational drug to try as just a trial thing, I was basically off to the races. I felt that I found a way out of the pain that I was experiencing. So for the next 10 years, between the ages of 13 and 23, my life was really a downward spiral. So it went from just bad to worse, to worse, to worse. And it culminated when I was 23 years old in 1991. I got into a bad car accident on the Atlanta freeway, which is just 4 hours northwest of Savannah, where I grew up. And my father came to visit me to try to help me out. He'd heard it was quite a terrible accident. And when he got there, he saw for the first time how bad that my life had actually become. I hadn't been able to pay my rent for months. I was in real financial debt and financial strife. I had legal issues that were going on. And basically he saw, essentially the squalor that my life had become due to the lifestyle that I was living. So in a last-ditch effort, my father just said to me, pack your bags. And so I did. I packed a couple of bags and got into my father's car, and he drove me to the Greyhound bus station. If you've been in America, the Greyhound is the one that goes all over the country. And he said, look, you can't stay here, right? Your life is imploding, and you're probably going to die if you live here. If you stay here, where are you going to go? So I closed my eyes. There was a big map on the wall, and I closed my eyes and I started walking towards it, and I was pointing, and I pointed to the region of the Northwest. And I had vaguely remembered a friend of mine just say that he had been to a town called Seattle, Washington. So I said, Dad, I'll go to Seattle. So he gave me $100 and basically put me on a bus. And 5 days later, I got off at 8th and Stewart in Seattle, about half an hour before the moment that I shared with you earlier. So as I was carrying my bags and I was walking around, I didn't know a soul. I didn't have anywhere to go. And I had $5 left of the $100 my father had given me. So I was walking around the town and I had these bags, and they were heavy, so I had to put them down about every 20 to 25 meters. So when I put them down and I looked up and I saw the Space Needle, that was the moment. And interestingly, it's a moment that represents both the highest and lowest moments of my life in exactly the same moment of time. It was the lowest that my life had ever become, and at the same moment, it was the start of the change in the course of my destiny. So ironically, afterwards, I realized I couldn't carry my bags around town because they were too heavy. So I went back to the Greyhound bus station, and I put those bags with my last $5, I put them into a locker. And I never went back to get them. And so I guess, this is the point where you really see that for the first 23 years of my life, in that moment, I could feel so strongly it amounted to absolutely nothing. Like an entire 23 years was just amounted to nothing. But the seed was planted, and that's what occurred in that moment of time, that I heard those words. There is an infinite potential for this life. What are you going to do? So I get really moved when I get a chance to share the story with people, because, when I think about, I am a mindset, I work in mindset and strategy. But when I think about mindset and the difference that it can make in a life when we have a mindset shift, and I think about what occurred that day, when I get a chance to actually just be humbled and grateful, because today I get, world champion athletes coming to me. I get top business leaders coming to me, top salespeople coming to me, performers, media performers coming to me, looking to me to help them to perform better. And I just, I get reminded of that moment. And I think my life could have gone any way. And because of one mindset shift, really feeling and understanding there was an infinite potential for my life, everything changed. So afterwards, I didn't know what potential meant. I just heard these words. I had a vision of it. I knew when I looked at the Space Needle, I didn't know exactly what it meant, but I knew I was supposed to be living on the top of it, not underneath it, not in terms of a metaphor. So I just started to look up who knows about potential. And so I went to a number of different, I just went, I went for it. I really just worked hard. I worked as hard as I could. And I started going to the people in those days that were kind of big in the United States, doing, personal development and these kinds of things. So this is just really probably about less than 20% of the things that I actually did. But this gives you a sample of, what did I do to try to fulfill this potential? And I'm only going to be able to share my own story. So I'm not saying this for anyone else, but and I'm not saying it about everybody that's on there. There's been some very effective techniques and technologies and knowledge that I got from some of what's on the board, what's on the screen. But at the same time, for about the first year or year and a half that I was going through that, I felt like I was getting a feel good. I was feeling really good when I went to a seminar, and I felt really pumped up like I could do anything. And then I would find out that I wasn't doing anything differently. And instead of just feeling flat, I felt lower. And so I go back for what I call another injection of, hey, you can do anything. And I found after a while, it felt a lot like the drugs that I was doing, that I was getting these injections to keep myself feeling good, but nothing was moving. And the reason that I'm sharing that is because I became discerning at that point. And a key in itself, I'm going to share what I call the hidden keys to success, or at least a couple of them with you today. But for me, what it was is like, when we commit to something, when we truly get to that point where we're going to do it and nothing is going to stop us, I found that the magic happens. And the magic happened for me because the moment I got that committed, I started to find, or they found me, some amazing teachers, amazing teachings. And so as these worked, and that's my criteria, I don't really care how something sounds. There's so many things out there that sound good, that sound great, but they didn't do the trick for me. And so when I put something into a hidden key to success, or what I call my hidden keys to success, it must be something that works. And I've had the good fortune over 25 years now to work with thousands of people and be able to see from myself what really is effective, what isn't effective, and to create some of my own technologies along the way. So I'm looking forward to sharing with you a couple of those today in terms of the hidden keys. So this is what I call, my whole work is based on what I call the hidden keys to success, or the hidden keys to extraordinary success. So thank you again for letting me be here and sharing with you a couple of these. So the first thing that I want to set up as a foundation is this. When I started out, one of the things I realized is I needed to find out what success was. And before I go forward, I want to be really clear that for me, there are two parts of success. I believe that a lot of people in my industry confuse, in my estimation, success with achievement. So I want to be clear that to me, achievement is something on the outside that we attain. It could be wealth, it could be business success, it could be relationships. Anything that's on the outside that we seek to achieve or seek for success is an achievement in the way that I use it. And then there's another, which is inner success and inner fulfillment. And that is the state of being that we have. Are we happy? Are we fulfilled? Are we enjoying our life experience? So there are some people that believe achievement is success. And there are some people that believe inner fulfillment is success. Personally, I lean towards both. We are here having a human experience, and achieving success is really important. And also, the state of mind that we have is equally as important. So when I talk about success, I'm talking about both of those. I'm going to share a key on either side today, one of external achievement, one about internal success, but they really do work together for both of those outcomes. So when I started, I realized I wanted to find out what is the keys, what are these keys to success? What are these keys to fulfilling our potential? So I went to the people that were doing it. And I went to the top, read the books of the top business leaders of the day, read the books and went to seminars, got any information that I could from the top financial people at the time, the top athletes at the time, even the top spiritual leaders at the time. And I was looking for commonalities of these people. What do they actually do? And how do they get successful? Are there commonalities? And what I first of all realized, and I want to be really clear about it, is that very few people achieve the extraordinary success that they are capable of. And I want to repeat that because there's two important things there. Very few people achieve the extraordinary success that they are capable of. In 25 years of doing this work, the vast majority of people I see out there aren't achieving their success. They know that they can achieve more. They're not achieving to the top of their potential. And I'm here to say for certain, it's not a capability issue. That's not the problem. So it's very few. If you look at the top wealthy people, 2% of the population has financial freedom, but everybody wants it. A few percent of the people have the businesses at the level that they really want to have. Few people reach the top of their game in the athletic industry. Few people have the loving, close relationships that we all want to have if you really look under the surface. Very few people have the extraordinary success that we are capable of. So that's something that I wanted to start with. So I wanted to ask a question. We'll just try this and see if we can. I'm a person that doesn't like to just speak. Really, interaction to me is the best way to have a conversation and to all grow together. So I'm going to ask a question. We'll try to see if you can put something in the chat box. I discovered something when I was studying these successful people. So actually, I discovered about 6 or 7 common traits of all of these people. But there was one major one. And it wasn't something about what they did. It was about who they were. It was a state of being that they had. So I want to just invite you to put in the chat box. Now, if you don't want to do this publicly, you can just send it to me personally. Can I just get, if you would, what do you think it is? The most successful people on the planet, what do you think they have in common? Anybody willing to give it a crack? What is the thing that they have in common? Discipline, drive, attitude, positive mindset, inspiration. These are some really good ones. They have all of these. Stickability, self-esteem, good habits. Yeah, they have all of those. And all of those actually stem from a base one. All of those, and it's actually in the list. The most successful people on the planet are inspired. I put motivated there because a lot of times we confuse the word motivation with inspiration. And by the way, all of these answers are great. Drive, discipline, good habits, stickability, self-esteem, desire to be successful, they all stem from that. If you look at it, what's underneath it is they love what they do. No one has to make them get up in the morning and do what they do. They have a vision and they're inspired by it. The word inspired, the etymology of inspired or inspiration is spirited from within. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the importance of that. It's spirited from within. They just are not going to be stopped in doing what they do. They have a destiny and they feel it. And we all have that, has been my experience. So thanks for your participation. That was really great. And again, these are fantastic answers. I'm going to jot them down myself, and they all are part of it. At the heart of it is finding what you're inspired by. When you're inspired, you naturally have discipline. When you're inspired, you naturally have self-confidence and self-esteem. You naturally like yourself. You naturally desire to be successful. All these ones that are coming out. So I wanted to talk about the power of creation. We are at the heart creative beings. And I want to illustrate what I mean by that. We are here to create. There's been amazing creators, and these people that are on the screen, none of them were remarkable as children. In fact, Albert Einstein on the top there was dyslexic when he was a child, when they didn't understand dyslexia, and he was put in the back of the room with a dunce cap and called stupid. And that was his upbringing. Oprah Winfrey grew up in some of the harshest of conditions, but look at what they created. These aren't special people, if you get what I mean. We like to think of them, but they're just people that were really, really inspired. And they used their creative energy to create something that inspired them. Albert Einstein has told us more about the universe we live in than most people ever, a lot of people combined. Richard Branson, how many hundreds of companies is he down the road still innovating? Oprah Winfrey, the brand that she's created, the TV network, the network that she's created, the difference in people's lives that she's created out of inspiration, out of that creativity. And Tom Brady, he's the American football quarterback, for those of you that don't know, at 43 years old, left a Super Bowl winning team, went to an average team, and then they won the Super Bowl. So the creativity is endless. And this is what we have. And some creations on the planet, inspired creations. If you think about cell phones, a few decades ago, cell phones weren't even a concept. They were created, and they have revolutionized the way that we live our lives. Hubble telescope, we now have pictures. We don't have to guess about the galaxy anymore. We know what's happening in it because of this amazing creation. And it's not just inventions or music or media. It's things like sales businesses. I'm currently fortunate to be working with a top real estate agent in his country, and he's making hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in commissions, millions of dollars of sales every single month. He's created it. From when he started, none of that was there. He's created it from scratch. And the wealth of $200 billion, Jeff Bezos from Amazon created a wealth of $200 billion. So we can create, and whether it be professional, whether it be personal, we have this ability to create. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. So this is the bottom line here. A couple of things to set as foundations, because I'd like to take you through a little bit of an exercise just to give you a bit of a taster of a key to success. And hopefully you might get an answer that you can take away and make a difference in your life today. But the bottom line is you have an amazing ability to create, an amazing ability to create whatever you want. That's not a new agey statement, it's a fact. And connection with clarity equals extraordinary success. I'm going to talk about those two words quite a bit more: connection and clarity. When we are clear about what we want and it's authentic, it's true to us, we have an enormous power to be able to create. So that's a missing link. And again, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. I think it's in the next slide. Most of us are creating unconsciously. We are creating from a place that we're not 100% clear about what we actually want. And therefore, our creations are a fraction of what they possibly could be. We get up in the morning, we have a vague idea of what we think we want to create. We kind of get there. Sometimes we wake up and think, I'm not really sure that I'm going in the directions that I want to go in. We haven't created them. The vast majority of people on this planet, to me, it's a tragedy, are creating mostly unconsciously, not with full consciousness of who we are and what we want. So how do we achieve that? That's the key. Clarity is one of the hidden keys to success. So this is something that I'm fond of saying when I do a keynote talk and this type of thing, or I work in a sales training. This is one of the things that I often will say. The size and authenticity of your vision determines the size and authenticity of your accomplishment. The size and authenticity of your vision determines the size and authenticity of your accomplishment. What I mean by that, like I'll ask people in a group, if it's a sales meeting, and I'll say, how many people in the room have a one-year goal? On average, about 80 to 90% of people raise their hand. And then I'll ask the next question. How many of you know by the time that you're finished, the last day, what you have achieved, what finance you've achieved, what recognition you've achieved, anything that you wanted to achieve? How many of you know exactly what that looks like when you start? Not one hand usually goes up. But it's a missing piece, because if we can tap into that level of clarity, we set forth a whole different level of circumstances, a whole different level of being, which I'm going to talk about, which accomplishes so much more in the same amount of time. So the size and authenticity of your vision determines the size and authenticity. The authenticity part, I'm going to talk a little bit more about. So it comes down to this. This is the hidden key number one. It's your real why. And you might say to me, okay, Sridhar, this isn't hidden. How many people are talking about your why today? Everybody's talking about your why today. But I have an observation. The vast majority of those people talking about their why aren't achieving it. Stop and think. The vast majority of those people are not achieving what they say that they want to achieve. So my question is, why not? And it's the middle statement. This is the hidden key. My hidden keys, and the reason I call them that, is if we're going to get real success, my experience is we have to go a bit deeper. We can't take these surface things that are written in books and talked about on movies and all these sorts of things that are at the surface. We have to dig a bit deeper if we're really going to dig into the well of the spring well of success, is what I call it. It's got to be real. It's got to be what we really want. And that's not the easiest thing sometimes to do. And I'm going to be honest, I don't have time in this small session in the next half an hour or so to help you completely get your why. I have strategies that I work with people. It takes a little bit longer than the time we have, but I'd like to give you something to start the process, to ask if you'd like to follow along, if this is something that interests you. So how do we find that real why? So one question that we can ask, well, first we look at, what do we do? So many times when people tell me their why, I see that they're not actually living it. They're not doing it, which tells me that that's not their why. Something else is more important to them, that's why they're doing that instead of the thing that they say is their why. But if we examine, what do I do? If I examine what I do, here I am, 6 o'clock, really excited today to speak with you after a full day's work of consults. I love doing what I do. I love assisting people to awaken and fulfill their potential. It's one of the things I love. There's a few others, but I love it. And if you know me, you know that I do this quite a lot of the time. So that's what I look at. What do I want, or what do I do? So first, if you want to find out your why, really look at yourself and see, what am I drawn to? What do I do? Not what do I think I should do? What do I actually do? So many people confuse what they think they should do rather than what they really want to do. So ask yourself, if you know, what do you do? What's the thing that really inspires you, or what do you do? And if it's, don't say work, like if it's work, what part of your work do you find yourself gravitating to? And then ask yourself the question, why do I do that? It's not the easiest question sometimes, but why do I actually do what I do? Why am I doing that? Of all the different things I could do on this planet, why am I doing that most days? And then once you find that out, why is that important to me? And then we keep going. Why? It's a digging process. If I can share something with you today, it's this. Your why is not something you know. Your why is not something that you know. That's been the problem with why. I want to know my why. Knowing your why makes no difference. You must connect with it. You must go within yourself and connect. I call it a spring well. You must connect with it and really get that spring well of inspiration, because life is challenging. Any pursuit is challenging. We really need to have that inspiration that's greater than those challenges to keep going. And the greater the inspiration, the greater the achievement. So it's about connecting, and that takes a bit of digging. My experience is people's why actually starts at a very young age. We just didn't usually connect with it. It became an unconscious thing. That's what I mean by we're living it out unconsciously. But if we keep digging into why, we keep digging into why, and we keep digging into why, eventually it's that process, and all of a sudden you connect. I've connected with, I know what I'm doing, and I read it every single day. And every day that I read it, I'm equally as inspired to continue to move forward. I recommend everybody do this. It's a different plane of existence than most people live. So I've got a little exercise. Well, first of all, sorry, I'll have a example for you. So I worked with a client, I'm just going to call him John. And John said he wanted to be really inspired in his life, and he wanted to, take things to a new level. And I said, great, John, what does your life demonstrate that you love to do? What is your life about? And he goes, well, and please make sure to know that there's no wrong answer. And he said, I love to make money. And I said, great. Well, why do you love to make money? And John said to me, well, it's lifestyle. I love to have lifestyles, and I'd love to have these things. And I said, well, great. Well, why is, of all the things you could do on the planet, why is lifestyle the most important to you? And then he paused, he really went within. And he said, I got it. I said, well, what is it? He said, I didn't have much when I grew up. We grew up, my parents were really nice people, and we were a good family, but we didn't have much. And I wanted for a lot of stuff that I couldn't have. I don't want to want for that stuff. And then he thought some more. He stayed quiet, so I let him go with it. When people are digging, just let him go with it. He kept digging. He said, I think there's even more to it. And I said, what is it? And he said, well, I grew up in this family that had integrity. My father was a businessman, and he cared for people. He worked hard, but he got taken advantage of. He was a nice guy. His employees took advantage of him. His customers took advantage of him. And I watched him lose his business to that. And you could see the feeling in John, when he was saying that. And I said, so great, what did you decide when you were back at that time going through it? What seeds were being planted then? And he just got this look in his eye, and he said, I want to be a respected business person. And I could see that he was on the right thing. So what started out as money actually ended up respect. It was respect that he wanted. Now, John is an architect, and I said, so we dug into it further. We really got the essence of, he was operating at a okay level, but what he really wanted was to be a world-renowned. He wanted to work with the top projects, the top architects, in the world, the top projects in the world, and he's actually doing it. He's broken into that level of really famous people that are getting him to design houses and buildings, and he's doing some amazing things. But it was connected from it. So sometimes when we start out what we think is our why, it actually leads us to something deeper. So if you'd like to, I'll continue to go on just because I know we have a bit of a time constraint here, but if you do it now or do it, please feel free to do it while I'm continuing to speak, or do it after this. Really just try that exercise. First of all, examine what you do, and then really start digging down. If your why isn't real, it's just hogwash. Please get that. And I'm sorry to be so direct about it, but this is what I deal with day in and day out of my work, is all these people that think they have their why that don't, because they read a book and they think they got it because they read the book. They don't. You've got to dig for it. It's got to be real if it's got to connect, and it's got to be a feeling. You've got to you feel it when you know that you've got your why. Okay, so we'll go to the second key. So once you've got your why, the second key, as a mindset strategist or a mindset specialist, you probably won't be surprised, is to keep your mind aligned. And I can't say this one enough, is to keep the mind aligned. It's to keep it, I'll go ahead and put the next slide on. I call SKID. There's something that I call SKID, which is the silent killer of dreams. And it's just silently killing most of the population. There are two things more than anything else that I've experienced in 25 years or so of doing my work that people don't achieve what they set out to achieve. One of them is fears. There's various different fears that we experience at different times. Fears of failure. I'm not going to do that because I might fail. Fears of loss, fears of rejection, fears of incapability. I can't do it. Fears of inadequacy. I'm not good enough to do it. That person's better than me. I can't do it like them. We have to sometimes really look deeply to see these subtle messages coming from, it's not like we're sitting there going, I know I can't do it. We know it because they stop us when we when we go for it. And that's what the fears are, the thing that kills the dreams. And the other is, and this is a tricky one for people because sometimes it's hard to see, subconscious belief patterns. They're beliefs, and you'll know them when they get there, because you'll go to do something in your life and go to achieve something, but all of a sudden you go, you know what, that person's better at it than me. I think I'll take a pass this time, or I'm going to do it at this level instead, or I'm bothering them. This is a big one for people that don't make calls in sales. Oh, you know what, I don't want to bother those people, so I'll just make a cup of coffee instead, and I'll distract myself and procrastinate so I don't do what it is to do, so I can make it happen because I don't want to bother them, or they might get angry at me. This really takes salespeople out. I can't do it. I can't do it. You know, maybe they can do it. Just for whatever reason, I can't do it. I don't have the capability. I don't know how. Next time, if your thinking tells you you don't know how, please realize it's a strategy to avoid failure. That's all I don't know how is. It's a strategy to not want to try because we're afraid of failing deep inside. Now, I know I said I was going to go a bit deeper, but again, in my experience, that's what creates results. We've got to really look at what's happening under the surface if we're going to break through to new levels of success. So these are the subconscious patterns. I'm too old, too young, too big, too small, too tall, too short. It's all that I'm too or not enough. These are the things that stop people from their dreams, from achieving their full potential. So here's the bottom line. And this is another one that isn't a hidden key to success unless you look a little bit deeper. Our thoughts are actually determining our reality. But this isn't new, right? But here's what is. People say, if my thoughts are determining my reality, I'll look in the mirror and say I'm successful and I'll be able to achieve. Does it work? I haven't seen it work. It's the subconscious thoughts that are determining the reality. It's the thoughts underneath the surface. It's that subtle thought when we go to break out of our comfort zone that says, oh, no, don't do that right now. You have to do it later. Or, you know what, I'm not going to go for the big. I'm going to settle for this because at least it's safe that way. I won't fail. It's the underneath subtle thoughts. That's why I call it the silent killer of dreams, because they're just happening under the surface, but you can feel them. Every time you have a fear, it's something like that going on. And this is what's stopping people. And the tragedy to me is this. We believe all of these thoughts. We believe we can't do it. We believe we might fail. We let it run us. We believe we're not as good as them. We believe all of these thoughts, and we don't even stop to question, are these thoughts actually the case? Is this the truth? We just believe them, they take over, and they run things and limit us. That's been my experience. So here's the real question. Are they the truth? Is it actually true that you can't do it? If that's a belief that you've had. Everybody has these beliefs, by the way, at some point. Is it true? Is it true that you're going to fail if you venture out? Is it true that that person is better than you, or you don't have the capability of doing it? Is it true that it's going to end up in a worse situation? So let's take an example, because what I found out in all the years of work that I've done is none of it is true. None of it is true. The most significant things that stop people from achieving their dreams, from living a human experience that they love and that's full of everything that they want, is a lie. One lie after another. So let's take an example, and you might think of if you've had a limiting belief at any point in your life and you want to follow along, please do this with your own belief. I'll just do an example. There's a lot of the clients that I've had, very, very successful, super successful people, are still coming out of that context. I worked actually with a multi-billionaire, and I had a chance to watch him still coming out of that context. I'm going to fail. He made a mistake. He went away from life, holed up, didn't want to face the world. And that's what we found. After all of these years and all of that success, coming from nothing to everything, he still was coming out of a failure context. So let's take a look at it. So when someone comes to me and they say, I'm going to fail, here's what I do with them. How do you know? So really right now, when you think about it, how do you know you're going to fail? Absolutely. How do you know that? Of course, the only answer is I don't, I can't. I can't see the future, therefore I don't know that I'm going to fail. The next question is, what happens to you when you believe that you are going to fail? So here you are, you're excited about achieving something. It could be a goal, it could be a lifetime dream, it could be anything. It could be wealth, it could be a relationship, could be anything that you want to achieve. What happens to you when you believe you're going to fail at it? The most common answers that I get, and it's unique to each person, but the most common answers that I get are things like, I fold up, I get really anxious, I get nervous, I get shaky, I don't do it, I procrastinate, these types of things. That's what it's a being. So when we identify with the belief, even subtly believe the thought, we end up in all of that. So that's what happens when I believe it. A thought that I don't know is even true. What would happen if you didn't have it or believe it? Well, I'd be courageous. I'd really go for it. I'd have self-confidence. These are some of the answers that I get. I wouldn't let anything stop me. I'd really just go for my dreams. And then we look at, so let's do some opposites here. What are some reasons that you're actually not going to fail? It starts here. Or in the subconscious mind. When that flips around, magic happens, has been my experience, because when we get our minds right, we can achieve anything, and we're in that energy to be able to achieve it. I have a group called the Mastermind Group with a lot of successful people in it, and I ask them about the zone. What's it like when you're in the zone? That's what I call this, is when you're looking at this, you get into a zone. And their common answer was, when I get in the zone, everything seems to fall into place. So think about a time in your life where you see everything just falling into place. Now stop and look at your mind state. You're resonating. You're aligned with what you say that you want. You're a match for it. And when we're not a match for it, the opposite tends to happen. And we attract all those distractions in the way. So what are 3 reasons or 5 reasons or whatever that you're not going to fail? Well, I'm not going to fail because I'm actually capable of doing it. I'm not going to fail because I have a lot of skills and gifts and talents. These are just some of the answers. I'm not going to fail because I actually have a lot of help. There's just absolutely no truth that I'm going to fail. It's just a subconscious mind pattern that's been there for a long time. But if we don't start to notice them and actually address them, they're that thorn in the side. They just become the thorn in the side. They stay with us, and over a course of a lifetime, they are severely limiting, has been my experience. So so that's what you do. I'll give you a 3-step process by the end of this. And I was going to mention, Brian and I were going to mention that I think there's going to be maybe just a few minutes left for questions. So if you have them, if you can type them in, and I think Brian will just ask me those. If you have any questions about anything that I've talked about today, because we're coming to the end, please just let Brian know or type them in. Okay. So just a couple of examples of things people have achieved. These are clients that I've worked with that have achieved things from addressing their beliefs. So when Cameron came in, he's the owner of a company, a recruitment company, and he came in and he said, look, I'm just not performing. You know, something's going on. I used to perform, I'm not performing. And I said, great, well, what's actually going on? And he said, I'm not making my calls. I'm not doing the things that I need to do. And I said, so let's investigate. Like you're able to make them. What's going on in your mind state? And we dug down and found that there was a fear with him that all of a sudden he felt because of the environment that he was in. It was a changing environment. And he said, look, people I'm afraid they don't want to hear from me, and they're going to get angry if I call them. So in his mind, there were 2 options. He could call and they could get angry, or he could procrastinate and not do it. So he chose not to do it. So we actually investigated that, and I asked him those questions. How do you know they don't want to hear from you? How do you absolutely know? Well, I don't. Well, what happens to you when you believe it? And he looked at it. And what would happen if you didn't have that? And he goes, look, I'd be courageous. I have an awesome service. He's got a great company, an awesome service to provide. And then I said, okay, great. So find the opposite. And he said, you know what? People actually need what I'm doing. Some people may not get that they need what I'm doing, but they need what I'm doing desperately. So Another question that I asked him is, what is the absolute worst that could happen? Well, they kind of yell at me on the phone and say, don't ever call me again. And I go, and then what? Are you still all right? And he goes, well, yeah. And I said, is that worth giving up your whole dream for, so that one person doesn't get upset with you? He said, well, no, it's not. And then I said, what are the chances that they're actually going to be that rude? Not really. They may not care to talk to me, but great. You find that out and go to the next one. So he turned it around. In a couple of weeks, he came back and said, the whole thing just turned around in his case. Sometimes it takes people a bit of time to get through certain beliefs, to, it's an incremental thing. But in his case, he smashed it. He started to make his calls, his business turned around, and I saw him, so it'd be about 6 months later, just the other day, and he's rocking and rolling. He's just got past that limitation, that block. But if you look at that block that's in place, it stays in place for people their whole careers, and it severely limits the outcome that they can achieve. Another one that's really cool, and what I'm really wanting to do here is demonstrate the power of mind state and what actually happens. What happens when we just look at what actually occurs when we question thoughts instead of just believing them. So Dr. Tooth here was a client of mine, and she's been a psychologist for 30 odd years. And she had something happen in her youth, and her psychology pathway, she's an amazing psychologist even today, but in her psychological pathway started with her own thing that happened with her as an event. And after 30 years, we connected, and she came to see me because she wasn't shaking through, she wasn't getting through it. And I just said, what is it that you're actually perceiving? That event happened, 30 odd years ago. What are you still perceiving about it? And so we looked at it, and she wrote a beautiful testimonial for me about she just cracked through it. Like after 30 years, she just dissolved the way that she was looking at that situation, and it gave her a tremendous amount of freedom. So it's like it works in it's the mind and what it actually does. Identifying and dissolving those limiting blocks is just life-changing. So the third example, and this is Tim and PJ. So when Tim and PJ came, that's from Netflix, so they don't always dress like that. Tim and PJ, when they started, they're two Australian, you might know them, for those of you that are in Australia. PJ was, whoops, I've lost them now, but you got the picture. So Tim and PJ, basically when they arrived, they were looking to break out. So PJ was a reporter on Sunday in Australia, and Tim did docos and doco presentations and these kinds of things. They wanted to break out into the international scene, but they lacked the confidence to be able to stand up for themselves and get what they needed. So we worked through the mind state because they were starting to break through and getting some communications with big international cable networks. And they felt really nervous and these types of things, and we just broke through. And I got them to see, what are you believing? At what point is it better for you to walk away? And they went in and they were really, really strong. They got just about everything that they asked for from from the network. And then they did this show called Extreme Engagement. If you haven't seen it on Netflix, I highly recommend it. They put themselves through the toughest environments. So they went to tribal communities around the world and challenged their relationships. So they were engaged. And they said, let's just put it to the challenge. Let's put ourselves through the most difficult experiences that we possibly could imagine and challenge ourselves. And so they did. And it didn't go so well at times. And I was getting phone calls going, we can't make it another day. I can't stand Tim, or I can't stand PJ, or whatever. But what we did was just look at, what are you perceiving? What are you perceiving? What are you perceiving? So, and it was an amazing outcome. I won't ruin the show. Please look at it. If you haven't seen it, please look at it on Netflix. In fact, if you excuse me for looking away, I'll just put it back. I think I just went a step too far with the presentation. So hopefully we'll get that back and I won't have happy fingers again. So it's an amazing show, and it was incredible what they accomplished. I mean, I even said to them are you sure you want to do it? Because you're really challenging yourselves. But through that, and the reason I wanted to put them up is they really stand for people in their relationships. And what happens in relationships, be they personal or professional, is we start having stories and perceptions about each other, and then it starts to erode the love and the communication, the loving atmosphere in relationships. But if we can just address those perceptions, we can have major shifts and turnarounds. So I won't ruin the end, or you can maybe even Google it if you will, but it was incredible as to what they experienced. So I'll leave you, and I think we're going to have maybe 5 minutes for questions. But these are a couple of questions you can ask yourself if you'd love to get some results and take something away from today. If you like what you heard, please take what you want and leave the rest of it behind. If you'd like to get some practical value out of today, ask yourself these questions. Am I fulfilling my full potential? Really stop and dig deep in this one. Am I really fulfilling my potential? Can I achieve more or experience more, maybe internally? Could I be more settled or not settled, but definitely not settled. Can I be more peaceful in my life? Can I be more content? Could I, happier, those sorts of things. What thought patterns hold me back? If I'm not achieving at the full potential, what thought patterns hold me back? And who would I be if I didn't have that? Who would I be in my life if those patterns weren't there? And then please look at the recording and answer some of those questions from before. Do I know it's true? And what happens to me? And who would I be? And find the opposite evidence. It'll just literally change your life. This is something I've done every day for a long period of time. And I just keep watching my life change. And opportunities come like this amazing one that you guys have given me today. So, as a 3 steps to success. So this is my 3-step plan. If you want to, it's a daily thing. It's something I do every day. The first step is, what is my inspired outcomes? The first thing I do is connect. Before I let the mind run away with me in the morning, I connect with what's important to me by reading those whys. I know them, but I read them every day. And every day that I read them, I feel connected in here. It's a powerful energy. So I'm not distracted as distracted by all the various different thought patterns. 2, I ask myself, what's in the way? What's in the way? What thought patterns are in the way? Or even it could be an obstacle in the way. What's in the way of achieving that? And I form a plan, be it those questions or be it some sort of work to dissolve it. Because if I don't dissolve it, it'll run away with my whole life. The first 25 years of my life was a belief pattern that led me living on the streets homeless. I know, and that was an extreme example, but that's what I know my mind will do if I let it run away with my life. So I ask myself what's in the way and I get on top of that. And 3, I ask myself, what are the highest priority actions to be able to achieve my most desired loves in this life? We are living a human experience that it is possible for us to love. We can live it from a place we have to or need to or should, or we can live it from a place that we love. And what's required, one of the things required to live a life that we love is to really understand what it means and to come from that place and address whatever is in the way. And then when we take action, my experience is this world is very generous. It just fills us up with opportunities. So I want to thank you. We'll have maybe just a couple minutes for questions if there are any. So I'm Sridhar. I want to thank you again for having me. These are my details. If you want to give me a call, if anything that you found today that you want to ask about more, or you want to delve deeper into something, please don't hesitate to give me a ring or talk to Brian and he'll send you my details as well. So are there any questions? Let's see. To finish up with, I think we have 4 minutes.
Yeah, well, thanks for that, Sridhar. And to everybody on board, if you've got any questions, I wouldn't bother with the chat box because we're going to be finished in a second, and we generally go to this networking part of the evening. And if anybody wants to ask questions, we'll just unmute ourselves and ask them. But as we wrap up, I just want to thank Sridhar for giving us time and being here with us tonight.